listener production. Hey, Sasha Barbagat here. Welcome to the final instalment of The Briefing's special three-part series on artificial intelligence and whether it's coming for your job. In this episode, Bension Siebert is sitting down with one of the leaders of Australia's union movement to find out whether there really is an AI job tsunami on the horizon, what unions and the governments are doing to help, and all the things you can do to protect your own career from a tech takeover. A reminder that in part one, we spoke with someone whose career disappeared overnight thanks to AI. And in part two, we explored how Australian healthcare professionals are using AI to avoid being replaced by it. Both of those are in your feed right now and also linked in the show notes. But for now, here is Bension's chat with the Assistant Secretary of the Australian Council of Trade Unions, Joseph Mitchell.
Joseph Mitchell, welcome to The Briefing.
Thanks for having me.
How much do you buy the very alarming predictions we've seen? Up to a third of Australian jobs killed by AI in the next 5 years.
AI is affecting every industry and nearly every kind of worker in vastly different ways. AI is a tool of work. It's going to automate some jobs. It's going to augment some jobs. AI is a tool of management where managers are using AI and AI tools for things like rostering, surveillance, hiring, firing. And then there's AI that affects the work that you do as a worker. So, you as a journalist dealing with AI-fueled disinformation online, as a creative worker dealing with massive content theft. When we see the impact of AI across the economy, it's going to affect pretty much everyone. And what that report shows, the Social Policy Group report, shows when it says that about a third of people are going to experience unemployment. That's if we don't do anything. So what we need to see as a result of AI impacting work are sort of three things. The first is protections for workers, making sure that there's guardrails in place about AI adoption. The second is job creation. So we need a more complex and better economy. And then the third is skills. How do we make sure that everyone is skilled for the future?
Is there a chance that we could be jumping at shadows a little bit here in the sense that we've got a very low unemployment rate? If there's a job tsunami coming at us, it hasn't hit yet.
Yeah, AI is an emergent technology. It's really an umbrella of technologies, right? So you've got things like your large language models and ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot and, you might use it to write a birthday card, but these things are being used to change the way that jobs that require communication are being done. You're already seeing news sites roll out AI-driven articles and that being seen as a point of pride rather than something that, investing in journalists. You're seeing people's jobs being augmented and changed where chatbots are working alongside them or monitoring calls. Chatbots might be being employed to do voice calls as well in call centres soon. We're not going to see it approach each job evenly. There are going to be jobs that are more at risk, but, no one's facing this alone either, and that's a really important thing.
You mentioned hiring and firing. Are you already seeing businesses using artificial intelligence to choose who they employ?
Absolutely. So this is one of the, even before ChatGPT, AI was being used by businesses to determine who they hire and who they fire. And it's been led by large multinationals. There are two really big examples here. Amazon was recently pinged because it trained an AI to read resumes. And it trained an AI to read resumes of people that already worked there. To say, if you already have a job at Amazon, you're probably more likely to succeed. Therefore, we should assess new people's resumes against the people that already work there. And what it did, it systematically excluded women. It systematically excluded people of colour. It excluded people without private school backgrounds. It was a racist, it was a sexist, and it was a classist bot. It was found out and shut down. But these sort of things are happening elsewhere in the economy as well.
What are Australian unions doing to protect people who are employed at the moment?
So, we are doing quite a lot, and it's really important that people join their union to actually help protect their work and protect the kind of work they do. We're not only working with employers to make sure that AI is being adopted fairly and being adopted in a way that promotes good work and leads to a fair allocation of work. But we're working to try and advocate for changes to protect people at every level to ensure that there are guardrails in place. I think there's a couple of good examples. The first is workers coming together to actually bargain with their boss to make sure that they are protected from the adverse effects of AI at their work. One happened quite famously last year at Woolworths, where the United Workers Union with warehouse workers across Victoria took a stand to try and say that the monitoring software that the boss was using was going to lead to unfair outcomes. That's because Woolworths had recently installed performance monitoring software in all their CCTV cameras, which were in a new way having a boss over your shoulder every minute that you were working. That led to a really good outcome. There was strike action, these workers stood together and they won a protection to make sure that they wouldn't be assessed unfairly by Woolworths when it comes to performance management.
This technology obviously has a lot of risks, but it also has a lot of potential benefits. Is there an argument that protecting some jobs may simply slow down a technology that could be really helpful for humanity? As in, for example, let's say a lot of doctors get put out of work, but healthcare becomes very, very accessible and mostly free for most people around the world.
We're not going to war with the tide here. We know there will be technological change. What we want to see is technological change that is pro-social and pro-worker. We think that there is absolutely going to be a place for AI in the workplace across all different industries going forward. Workers everywhere are experts in what they do. They know how their business work. They want their businesses and they want their industries they work in to be more productive and more efficient, because doing a good job is actually extremely satisfying, and it's why we have passions for so many different things that we do. And if AI can help us achieve that, then there's absolutely a role for it. But what we need to see is it adopted in consultation and in partnership with working people.
What do you think the federal government should be doing right now?
So they're doing a few really important things. You started off this conversation by saying, are we worried about automation? And absolutely, we are worried about some automation. But the best way to make an impact on automation is to create a more complex and more diversified economy. So doing things like the Future Made in Australia Act on the pathway to net zero, all of these things will help us make our economy more complex. We need more domestic manufacturing, we need a more complex set of exports, and we need a better sovereign capability in Australia so that if AI does come and does change the way some industries work, we have a complex economy that can absorb the various skills of people. The second is skills. So we need to see a massive uplift in our skills infrastructure in Australia. And we've seen the start of that under this government with the creation of Jobs and Skills Australia and the Jobs and Skills Council underneath them. Things like free TAFE are going to be really important to encourage people to do lifelong skills learning. And then the third thing are guardrails. So Minister Ed Husic, with the guardrails process that he's kicked off, is considering AI regulation that takes AI and tries to sort of sand the hard edges off it. It is going to be disruptive, but how do we make sure that it is disruptive in a pro-social, pro-productivity way? And the guardrails, which we believe need to be adopted in a central AI Act, would be good for that.
Sure. Do you think if we use the thought experiment that actually there is a jobs apocalypse, actually huge numbers of people are put out of work in a very short period of time, to prevent that, do we need something more radical at a legislative level?
So we think that if we get the balance of things right, so that's fair consultation, transparency, skills, and a more diversified economy, we'll be able to withstand any wave that occurs. The key to making sure that your economy grows jobs, has productivity growth, and is technologically robust is making sure that you've got a diversified and complex economy. Because, when it comes to Australia's economic complexity, we are one of the least complex nations in the world. Our economy is, when it comes to ranking in the world, we have one of the lowest rankings of economic complexity for a nation that's this rich, because a lot of our wealth is drawn out of digging rocks up and sending them overseas. We need to be doing stuff with those rocks, or we need to be doing more in general.
What are you expecting on the positive side of artificial intelligence in terms of job creation? Are you expecting an artificial intelligence industry at scale in Australia?
It's really hard to tell if there is going to be an artificial intelligence industry, but we know that there's going to be a lot of changes to jobs, and there might be new skills that are associated with that. It's really hard, before the invention and widespread adoption of various technologies to predict exactly what kind of roles that's going to create.
What are your top tips for workers worried about AI, excited about AI, to make sure that they have a fulfilling job into the future?
I think one of the things I think about is, if we're worried about AI, a lot of people are being made to feel as though they are alone in the world and that they are up against just giants by themselves, and that's just not the case. There are people that are working with you and want to work with you to make sure that the future that comes, despite any changes of technology, is a better place. And that's what the union movement's for. But there are things that we can all do, right? So making sure that we're thinking about the skills that we have are robust. We're working together to make sure that as technologies get adopted, we're informed. We are skilled up in using that technology in a really positive way. And if we're excited about it, again, it's that making sure that the creativity and authority and expertise that you demonstrate at work is central to the adoption of AI. I mean, ultimately, for many jobs, AI will be a tool for experts, used by experts, and will amplify that expertise, but only if managers actually see the potential in their team.
Joseph Mitchell, thanks so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Thanks for your time.
That was the Assistant Secretary of the Australian Council of Trade Unions, Joseph Mitchell, speaking with Bension there. And that is it for this 3-part series on AI and Australian jobs. We appreciate you listening. If you haven't caught the first 2 episodes, they are in your feed right now. Definitely worth having a listen to. And before you go, if you could share these eps with someone who you think might enjoy them, maybe someone who's a little anxious that AI is coming for their own job, it's a really easy way you can support us and all we do here at The Briefing. I'm Sasha Barbagat. Catch you tomorrow morning at 6 for another dose of the headlines and another deep dive.